Incredible moment revealed. Mute girl's first words sparked by a single mom's unexpected kindness. Sarah felt the weight of the world pressing against her shoulders as she stepped into the diner. The neon lights flickered overhead, washing the cramped space in a harsh glow. She forced a smile for the early morning regulars, who merely grunted a hello, eyes flitting to her name tag, then starkly away. She could hear their whispers follow her like shadows. Single mom, struggling, she's not cut out for this. Sarah clenched her jaw, her heart racing with familiar anxiety that twisted in her chest. She knew their labels well, and yet she fought against them daily, yearning to prove they were wrong. As she poured coffee and served pancakes, her thoughts drifted to Emily, her 8-year-old daughter who sat alone on the playground, hidden behind her silence. While Sarah greeted tables with practiced cheer, anxiety haunted her. She worried about Emily's place in the world. Fear bloomed in her chest like a storm cloud. What if her little girl never found her voice? What if she remained an outcast forever? After a long shift, Sarah transitioned to her night job, scrubbing floors and cleaning offices. Each wipe of the cloth echoed her internal struggle. Working 2 jobs wasn't just exhausting, it was suffocating. Swallowed by exhaustion, she longed for a moment to breathe, a chance to carve out a space where she and Emily could thrive without judgment hanging over them like a dark cloud. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. After weeks of nurturing Emily's light during their quiet evenings spent together, an impulsive decision led Sarah to volunteer at the school. The trepidation filled her stomach with knots as she braced for judgment. What if the other parents looked down on her for being there? Would they see her attempts to uplift Emily as desperate rather than loving? The first day Sarah entered the school, she collided with Mrs. Thompson, the librarian, whose smile seemed to dissolve the tension in her clenched muscles. But as warm as Mrs. Thompson was, Sarah felt the world's fire in her throat, an inferno of self-doubt. Why was it so difficult to shed the fears that clung to her like a relentless fog? Every session ignited something within both of them, igniting sparks of hope, yet a voice nagged at the back of Sarah's mind, shadowing the joy. What if Emily didn't speak? What if she never found the courage? As the talent show loomed, her heart cracked with both pride and dread. When Emily took a deep breath to speak, all eyes would be on her, and the thought of coherent words escaping Emily's lips both thrilled and terrified her to the core. Would she rise to the moment or fall into silence again? With each passing day, the tension coiled tighter within Sarah's chest, a harbinger of the impending clash with her boss over her flexible hours. She maintained her fierce determination, promising herself she would not be another label in this town. Yet, as she braced to face him, the swirling uncertainties stung. Would he see her as a liability, a burden? The risk herself, her voice could carry her child forward. Would she pay the price too steep to bear alone? As she prepared to confront her boss, a burst of fury and clarity surged through her. She took a deep breath, gripping the doorknob, heart pounding like an echo, as a wave of incomprehensible tension lurked behind her vulnerable resolve. Would she find the strength to assert her worth, or would her silence, like Emily's, echo unanswered? The door creaked open, and Sarah stepped inside the dim office of her boss, Mr. Fields. Every step feeling heavier than the last. Her palms were clammy, her heartbeat a drumroll of anticipation, but she couldn't turn back now. She had long since reached a boiling point, the weight of existing as merely a caricature, the struggling single mom, had pressed down on her for too long. Today, she would not simply be defined by her circumstances. "Sarah, what brings you in today?" Mr. Fields leaned back in his chair, his smirk as practiced as her smile had become. The flicker of impatience behind his eyes gripped her tightly, fueling her nerves as he glanced at the clock, clearly eager to turn back to more pressing matters. "I need to discuss my schedule," she started, though it felt as if her voice barely broke the surface of her resolve. Each word had to be precise, a calculated movement across a chessboard on which only she stood to gain or lose. "Things are tight around here. If you want more hours, you'll need to make it easier for me to manage," he interrupted, as though tossing away any doubt she might hold regarding her value. "Mr. Fields, I believe I deserve flexibility, not only for my current responsibilities, but also to support my daughter. She has been—" Sarah hesitated. Opening up like this felt like exposing a wound she had fought hard to keep under wraps. "She's been struggling socially, and I really need to be there for her right now." "Your hours are your hours, Sarah." His voice dripped with disinterest. "I can't give preference to personal matters that don't concern this diner." The words landed heavily, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Sarah's instinct was to deflate, just as she had countless other times. But a flicker of defiance ignited inside her. What did she have to lose? The world couldn't break her any further than it already had. She had endured too much to let fear dictate her decisions. "Actually, they do concern this diner, and my future," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her tone. "It's not just about me. I'm asking for a chance to show that I can be just as committed without drowning in hopelessness. I need support to ensure I'm thriving, which benefits you as well." Mr. Fields narrowed his eyes, the flicker of awareness dawning slowly. A silence enveloped the room, charged with the tension of unsaid words. Maybe he was reconsidering her value in a new light, or maybe he was merely annoyed at being challenged. "Don't think I can't find someone else," he finally snapped, his voice hardening. Management requires understanding," she countered, her heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "This isn't just about your bottom line. I can't be a stepping stone to someone else's success if it means losing sight of my family." As she stood there, her conviction sparking a transformation within, she felt the chains that had bound her for years rattling loose. Whether or not Mr. Fields acquiesced would change little in the larger scheme of her journey. What mattered was that she was taking a stand, for herself, for Emily, and for a better future. Mr. Fields stared at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the air buzzed with possibilities, but it remained shrouded in uncertainty. Would he dismiss her, or would this moment catalyze a shift in their unyielding dynamic? With an almost theatrical pause, Sarah prepared to hear the verdict that could either anchor her or plunge her into the depths of despair. Yet, as she breathed in the tension-laden air, an unshakable resolve washed over her. Perhaps this was the turning point not just for her career, but for Emily's life as well. The moment hung, suspense crackling between them, as Sarah held her ground. What would it take for her to break free from both her shackles and her doubts? "You have until tomorrow. I'll consider your request," he finally said, dismissively waving her away. Yet his words lodged like a stubborn stone in her throat. Stepping out of his office, adrenaline coursing through her, Sarah realized this confrontation had illuminated a path filled with resolve and potential. The tight ball of fear in her stomach twisted into something different, hope. But as she exited into the cool evening air, a new discomfort bubbled beneath the surface. How would Emily react to her brave choice? Would she find the courage to speak her truth with confidence, or would the silence still hold sway between them? The weight of yet another uncertainty loomed large, leaving her heart racing for the next step. The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting soft shadows across the scattered remnants of last night's dinner. Sarah stood at the counter, mechanically, engaging with breakfast preparations while her mind replayed the previous day's confrontation with Mr. Fields. It was still hard to believe she had stood her ground. As she cracked eggs into a bowl, the rhythmic sound was oddly soothing, centering her thoughts amidst the whirlwind of uncertainty. Emily shuffled into the room, her long hair disheveled from sleep, dragging the weight of her own unvoiced struggles. The distance between them felt palpable, a tension Sarah was desperate to break through. Trying to summon a smile, she turned to Emily, which felt like a stuttered attempt at connection. "Good morning, kiddo. Ready for a big day?" Sarah asked, but the question hung in the air, unanswered. Emily's gaze remained fixed on the floor, avoiding her mother's eyes, and the silence screamed of unspoken worries. Sarah felt a pang of despair. How could she encourage Emily to find her voice when she herself was still struggling to project her own identity? As she plated the scrambled eggs, an idea struck. She could foster conversation through simple storytelling. Every breakfast was a chance not merely for sustenance, but for bonding. "Did you know that when I was your age, I had a collection of rocks?" she began, in an attempt to lure Emily into the world of their shared memories. Emily's eyes flickered up momentarily, curiosity piqued. Sarah seized the moment. "What would you hide if you could create a treasure hunt?" Slowly, like a flower trying to bloom in a difficult environment, Emily spoke. "I don't know. Maybe painted shells?" Her voice trailed off. It was soft, but it was also a small breakthrough, igniting the trace of hope deep within Sarah. These moments, however fleeting, had to be reinforced. "That sounds amazing! You could collect them at the beach and then hide them in your favorite spots. I'd help you," Sarah responded, her enthusiasm genuine, imagining the glimmer of excitement in Emily's eyes. With each bite of breakfast, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their conversation resembled a delicate dance. Each step forward came with a hint of trepidation and a deep yearning to connect. She realized that she needed to bring this newfound assertiveness from her confrontation into the fabric of her home life. After breakfast, Sarah settled Emily at the table with her sketchbook while she tied it up. As she worked, her mind drifted back to the pivotal moment with Mr. Fields. What she had discovered within herself, the ability to stand up for both her values and her daughter's needs, filled her with an urgency to take control of all aspects of her life. She would not just navigate her professional world, but also become a proactive architect of her family's emotional dynamics. As the morning progressed, Sarah began crafting a plan. There were workshops offered in the evenings at the community center, places where learning could meld with practical skills. Perhaps enrolling Emily and even herself could serve as a foundation for rebuilding their relationship. They could tackle situations together, growing through shared initiatives. But first, she had to gauge Emily's response. "Emily," Sarah began, her heart racing at the thought of her daughter's reaction, "what if we took a class together? Anything you want, art, writing, or even how to play an instrument?" Emily looked up, her eyebrows knitting together as she considered the idea. The moment stretched out longer than Sarah anticipated, crackling with potential. "What if I don't like it?" Emily's fleeting insecurity broke through, contrasting with the flicker of hope in her mother's heart. "That's okay. We can just try it. The important part is that we do this together," Sarah replied, her determination solidifying with every word. Each challenge could be an opportunity, not just to share burdens, but to celebrate every small victory together. Emily seemed to ponder her mother's proposition, her lips nibbling anxiously at the edge of uncertainty. "What if I don't like it?" Emily's fleeting insecurity broke through, contrasting with the flicker of hope in her mother's heart. "That's okay. We can just try it. The important part is that we do this together," Sarah replied, her determination solidifying with every word. Each challenge could be an opportunity, not just to share burdens, but to celebrate every small victory together. Emily seemed to ponder her mother's proposition, her lips nibbling anxiously at the edge of uncertainty. Perhaps this engaged intimacy would inspire more of those hesitant but necessary words. As Sarah felt the shift in mood, possibilities unfurled before her. The thought of embarking on this journey with her daughter, both of them overcoming personal battles and emerging stronger, was too inviting to ignore. All she needed to do was push a little harder against the instinct to retreat. Yet, practically, how could she balance the chaos of work responsibilities while cultivating this newfound growth with Emily? Just as Sarah faced the daunting landscape of her own fears, it became clear she would need to confront the practicalities ahead. Before she could drown in the weight of her thoughts, the sound of the doorbell rang out, cutting through her internal dialogue. It was a small but pointed reminder that the world outside continued its ebb and flow, and with it, new challenges could emerge. Who was waiting for her on the threshold, and how would this unexpected turn further redefine her vision for herself and Emily? The doorbell ceased ringing, leaving an awkward stillness in its wake. Sarah's heart sped up as she glanced toward the entryway, anxiety twinging at her resolve. She had expected the day's rhythm to unfold gently, not to be interrupted by the uncertainty of an unexpected visitor. "Mom, who is it?" Emily asked, her voice still slightly uncertain, a stark contrast to the previous fleeting moments of dialogue. "I don't know yet, sweetie. Let me check." Sarah pushed herself away from the kitchen and opened the door, revealing a figure clad in a sun-faded coat that hinted at a too-early spring. Standing there was Megan, a new neighbor she had only met briefly in passing. There was a light spark in her eyes and an enthusiastic demeanor that seemed to fill the doorway with warmth. "Hi, Sarah. Sorry to drop in unannounced, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciated your little kindness last week with that book donation," Megan said, her tone genuine and upbeat. "I thought I'd bring over some homemade muffins as a thank you." Taken aback by the gesture, Sarah felt a flush of warmth rise in her cheeks, mixed with an unsettling sense of inadequacy. Her effort had felt so normal, a routine act of generosity tinged with frustration at feeling powerless in her own life. Yet here stood Megan, encapsulating gratitude in a simple gift, and suddenly Sarah's own self-worth flickered under the bright light of comparison. "Thank you, that's so thoughtful," Sarah managed, waving Megan into the kitchen. "Emily, come meet our neighbor." As Emily approached, Sarah noted the shift. Her daughter's posture relaxed, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity, even as she maintained a cautious silence. The cloud of reticence still lingered. "Hello, Emily. I heard you're an artist," Megan exclaimed, her voice bright. "I'd love to see your drawings sometime." Emily's response came mere seconds later, almost swallowed up by uncertainty. Yet the words were there, breaking through nonetheless. Okay." Sarah's heart soared. It was a tipping point wrapped in an ordinary interaction. Here was evidence that connection was within reach when nurtured properly. As the muffins were shared and small talk ensued, Sarah watched Emily breathe more easily. Each exchange pushed against the walls that had separated them. Barriers crafted by fear and misunderstanding began to crumble. When Megan finally stepped back into the crisp air, Sarah felt emboldened by their conversation. If simple acts of kindness and recognition had summoned a response from Emily, perhaps she could implement this same philosophy into their lives, create a haven where her daughter felt safe to express herself without judgment. That evening, after Emily had ventured into her room, Sarah sat down at the kitchen table, the warm aroma of muffins still lingering. She took a few moments to reflect, the challenge of redefining their lives pressing down on her peripherally like the dusk around the encroaching stars. She envisioned workshops and classes as launching points, but what if, instead, they began each week with smaller acts focused on seeing and acknowledging each other? What if they could shift their focus to understanding emotions, drawing, painting, even just speaking in the presence of one another without fear? As the day faded, Sarah pulled out her journal, her fingers flying across the page as she mapped a new approach, a mixture of real-world activities to engage both herself and Emily while creating spaces for self-expression. Late into the evening, she felt a quiet confidence building within. The more she carved out a plan that highlighted their unique qualities, the more she could reclaim not only her voice, but Emily's as well. But even within her burgeoning excitement, doubts tangoed at the edges of her mind. Could she sustain this momentum? Balancing her work with Emily's needs felt like a tightrope walk without netting below. And then there was the reality of Mr. Fields lingering in the back of her thoughts. Her newly discovered assertiveness began battling against fear of his unpredictable repercussions. As she closed her journal, a knock echoed from the living room, a reminder that the outside world still posed its own set of challenges and uncertainties. Who was behind that door now, and how might their appearance alter her carefully laid out plans and rising expectations? Sarah sighed, fortified by her aspirations, but still anxious about the responses that awaited behind that threshold. Her ability to maintain this journey hinged on more than her resolve. It would require confronting each challenge head-on, and she realized she was already bracing for another encounter that could change everything. With a deep breath, Sarah opened the door, her resolve taut, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. The unexpected visitor was a familiar face, though not one she particularly longed to see: Mr. Fields. His expression betrayed no warmth, only the cold countenance that had emerged when they last interacted. "Sarah," he said, his voice curt as he stepped forward without waiting for an invitation, "we need to talk about your recent donations." Just like that, the buoyant energy of her evening began to feel smothered. Sarah felt her enthusiasm shrink under his scrutiny, a sudden shift from nurturing her ambition to contending with the looming weight of scrutiny and judgment. Despite the warmth of her kitchen, the air felt frigid with his presence. I thought the donations were helping the community," she offered tentatively, searching for a foothold in the conversation. "They are," he interrupted, a mischievous glint igniting his eyes. "But let's discuss how they reflect on you, personally. You running around playing the hero while ignoring your real responsibilities at work? Are you willing to seriously jeopardize your job for some feel-good moment?" Each word pierced deeper than the last, pushing her into a corner filled with self-doubt. The memories of the day's earlier triumph faded momentarily, replaced with a whirlpool of anxiety. Had she truly overstepped? Was her attempt to connect with Emily through kindness to others just an excuse for her own failures? She felt the walls of her advancement close in around her, the possibility of personal growth stifled by this confrontation. "Mr. Fields, I'm doing my best to balance everything," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I believe in lending a hand where I can, especially for my daughter's sake." His laughter echoed, harsh and mocking, reinforcing her creeping apprehension. "You should be considering how much of your time is actually productive. Sending a message of goodwill when you're just a step away from being derelict in your duties? That wouldn't go unnoticed." As his words sunk in, Sarah's resolve sharpened. The desire to retreat was palpable, yet beneath the surface she felt inklings of defiance blossom. She'd fought hard for her voice in her relationship with Emily. Would she allow its significance to unravel under exterior judgment? "Listen, Mr. Fields," she began, leaning into her emerging assertiveness. "I'm here to make meaningful connections, for both me and my daughter. What I engage in, whether at work or in the community, matters to me, and if you consider that a flaw, then it reflects more on you than it does on me." His face twisted with incredulity, but shock turned into silent evaluation. Had she truly spoken up? It felt alien and empowering. Another small triumph nestled within the disarray of confrontation. Yet, even as her small victory flickered into being, Sarah could feel the weight of uncertainty tugging at her heart. Was this exchange actionable leverage or a reckless gamble? The very balance she fought to maintain, now threatened by Mr. Fields' narrowed gaze, continued to cloud her aspirations. "Consider this a warning, Sarah," he said, his voice lowering almost conspiratorially. Your sense of empowerment is commendable, but don't let it blind you. The higher the rise, the harder the fall. As he turned to leave, Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, adrenaline coursing through her as she fought back the multitude of questions spinning in her mind. The critical edge of his comment gripped her thoughts. Empowerment? Was it merely a facade that could shatter simply by virtue of exposure? Shaking off the remnants of his presence, Sarah returned to the kitchen, the warmth of the muffins now a distant memory. The resolve she had felt minutes ago now seemed tenuous, like a fragile thread waiting to snap. What could she do to safeguard this new path she was crafting for herself and Emily? The twinge of doubt had surfaced, but deep within lurked an impulse to confront it head-on. As she settled back at the table, her journal lay open, encircled by the lingering aroma that spoke of kindness and new beginnings. Renewed uncertainty loomed, couched in the question that persisted within. How can one define genuine growth amid relentless challenges? Would taking a stand against Mr. Field's bullying be enough to propel her forward? Or did she risk losing everything, including her job? In contemplating the answers, Sarah realized that the momentum she felt could either guide her to enlightenment or precipitate a profound plunge into the depths of despair. Each decision felt interwoven with the essence of her journey, each moment increasingly critical. The path was uncharted and perilous, but one thing was clear. It was time to navigate these treacherous waters with an unwavering strategy of her own making. The stirring of doubt coiled tighter, seamlessly interwoven with the prospect of reclaiming her voice and reshaping her world ahead. What choices lay in front of her, and would they lead to the empowerment she yearned for? Or was she merely standing at the edge of a precipice, daring to leap into the unknown? The following morning dawned gray and overcast, an atmospheric reflection of Sarah's restless mind. The moment she awoke, the memory of her confrontation with Mr. Fields loomed large, a persistent specter that neither faded nor vacated her thoughts. She made coffee, each repetitive motion lending her a fleeting sense of normalcy, but beneath it all, her heart raced with uncertainty. As she scrolled through her phone, searching for any news that distracted from her spiraling thoughts, a notification popped up from a community forum she often frequented. A local parenting group was set to hold a meeting discussing strategies for empowering children. As the sun broke through clouds intermittently, illuminating her kitchen in bursts, Sarah's instincts stirred. It wasn't a large gathering, but it presented a perfect opportunity, not just to listen, but to engage in something meaningful. Maybe, she thought, it's the right place for me to explore my fears head-on. The seeds of doubt still festered in her gut, but alongside them, the flicker of ambition ignited. After ensuring Emily had everything she needed for the day, Sarah took a deep breath and left for the meeting. En route, anticipation mingled with trepidation. Would the conversations about empowering children reflect on her own aspirations? Or would Mr. Field's voice intrude once more, warning her against stepping beyond her perceived limitations? Arriving at the quaint community center, she noted the diverse array of parents circulating within. Their animated discussions buzzed with hope and shared experiences, a stark contrast to the desolation Mr. Fields had projected. As Sarah entered the main room, her courage began to waver. She hesitated at the doorway, feeling like an outsider looking in. But a moment of resolve propelled her forward. She could respond to the doubts or harness them. Steeling herself, she approached a small gathering of parents engaged in animated conversation. "I didn't know this group existed," she said. "It's fantastic," replied one mom, her enthusiasm infectious. "We share ideas about how to uplift our kids, especially during tough times. What brought you here?" As Sarah responded, she started to share not just her struggles, but her passion for fostering connections, particularly between Emily and others. The dialogue flowed, punctuated by laughter and sympathetic understanding. Each word she spoke fortified her own belief in community connections, inciting feelings of empowerment that had grown dormant in the wake of Mr. Field's scrutiny. Gradually, the meeting transitioned into an open forum where parents could share their challenges. Sarah felt her heart race. Sharing felt vulnerable, yet exhilarating. She raised her hand, and the room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "I've been working hard to inspire my daughter and help her develop strong, thoughtful relationships," she began, feeling both fear and a rush of exhilaration. "But I also face criticism for pursuing goodwill outside of traditional responsibilities. It's hard to know whether I'm being a supportive parent or if I'm neglecting my professional duties." The room was heavy with understanding, and an unexpected wave of solidarity washed over her. One father shared his own experience of struggling to balance work and community involvement. Another mother chimed in about facing workplace scrutiny for her advocacy efforts. Each shared experience acted like threads weaving her into a tighter net of understanding. She wasn't alone. Leaving the meeting, Sarah felt lighter, the tension that gripped her chest unfurling. It was a powerful reminder that her journey, however fraught with insecurity, was shared. Reflecting on the tangible connections she forged, she realized empowerment wasn't merely about personal triumph. It was amplified in community support. When she returned home, an idea began to crystallize in her mind, something larger than herself and her fears, a project that could engage both her and Emily, and perhaps inspire others. The budding plan danced on the edges of her thoughts, blurring the lines between ambition and purpose. Just as she reached for her journal to map out her ideas, a sudden thought intruded. What if Mr. Fields were right? What if the vulnerability she uncovered here only exposed her to greater risks? As uncertainty crept back, Sarah captured her ideas in the pages of her journal, hoping to press through that fear. Still, the lingering doubt hung like a dense fog. What if this newfound clarity crumbled beneath the weight of professional expectations? Despite the uncertainty, Sarah knew she was at a pivotal moment, one that could either amplify her standing or deepen the chasm of doubt. The project she envisioned was more than an idea. It was a declaration of herself to her daughter, her community, and ultimately to the world. Yet, in the moments of plotting her next steps, another question flared. How far was she willing to push against the caution that clouded her actions? Would she risk not just professional stability, but her own sense of dignity? A silence enveloped her thoughts as she stared at the blank pages of her journal, the space where seeds of possibility awaited nurturing. The choices ahead loomed large, each weighted with potential consequence. What decision might define this leap? As the specter of Mr. Fields came alive in her mind, Sarah felt the tide turning, one that beckoned toward both risk and reward. What awaited her at the intersection of courage and vulnerability? The following days unfolded with a relentless rhythm, punctuated by moments of inspiration that danced just beyond Sarah's grasp. Each time she scribbled in her journal, mapping out her project, an exhilarating surge coursed through her. It was as if she were peeling back layers of self-doubt to reveal a vivid mosaic of potential. Yet, with each spark of clarity came a chilling reminder of Mr. Fields' criticism, draping a shroud of caution over her aspirations. Determined to combat this internal struggle, she started scheduling brief daily meetings with herself in a quiet corner of the house, where she refused to limit her thoughts to professional boundaries. Instead, she unleashed a form of brainstorming that embraced both emotional depth and professional insight. The first few sessions were awkward. Her mind grappled fiercely with the stifling caution instilled by her upbringing. But the more she confronted those reservations, the more intricate her ideas became. She imagined a project, a community-driven initiative that involved storytelling workshops for kids, combining her love of narratives with her desire to nurture connections. Children could express themselves, learn the power of their voices, and perhaps gain the confidence Sarah herself still clawed at. What if she held sessions where children shared their experiences, guided by the empathetic touch of their parents? Visualizing this ignited deep-rooted fears as vividly as excitement. Could she really orchestrate something that required engagement and could so readily be scrutinized? Mr. Field's voice punctuated her thoughts with derision, reminding her of her perceived inadequacies. Just as tension mounted within, an unexpected call from an old college friend, Mia, jolted Sarah's day. "You remember that time we talked about building spaces for creativity?" Mia asked, excitement bubbling through the phone. "What if you're already building something amazing and just don't see it yet?" Sarah listened, a flicker of hope igniting. They spent an hour reminiscing about their ambitious visions for their futures, an energizing exchange that served as a balm for Sarah's festering fears. Mia's enthusiasm was infectious. It rekindled a sense of possibility she had almost forgotten. Yet, the call was quickly followed by an insidious thought. Was she seeking validation from others to unearth her own capabilities? This new project, an outlet for connection, sparked a revelation within her. If she could dismantle the fears inhibiting her, then perhaps she could reshape her own narrative, not just for herself, but also to empower Emily and those who felt silenced. Days drifted onward, and Sarah painstakingly laid groundwork for her project. She identified local venues, reached out tentatively to other parents, and planned how to present the workshops. With every small decision, it felt as if she were reclaiming pieces of herself that had long been dormant. But the specter of Mr. Fields lurked ever close, silently challenging her determination with taunts echoing in her mind. "You aren't capable of this. You can't compare to those who have real accomplishments." Pushing through, Sarah filled her journal with plans and ideas, peppering them with affirmations. An exercise not just in optimism, but in defiance. She realized this project wasn't solely about external validation. It represented her fight against complacency and doubt. Then came the day she had been avoiding. It was time to share her ideas with a small group of parents from the meeting, to gauge interest and seek their support. As she prepared that night, the room felt heavier. She practiced her pitch in front of the mirror, each repetition sharpening her resolve, while the knot in her stomach twisted tighter. In the silence of her bedroom, she questioned whether the voices of support would drown out Mr. Field's echo. Would they see the merit in her vision, or would she face ridicule? The room vibrated with uncertainty as she closed her eyes, envisioning success. Yet, beneath that vision pulsed the fear of failure. Would she step into the light, ready to face potential rejection, or retreat into the comfort of obscurity? The next morning, she stood at the precipice of what could be a pivotal moment, marking the edge between the safe confines of doubt and the exhilarating unknown that lay ahead. Exhaling deeply, she opened her journal one last time, reminding herself this was her story to write. As she stepped out the door, she whispered a vow of empowerment, knowing the time had come, not just for her to voice her dream, but to confront the monster of her hesitation. The potential for transformation loomed, tinged with fear, but shimmering with hope. In that moment, as she crossed the threshold, Sarah felt resolve intensify. The ground was shifting beneath her, a delicate balance of courage and trepidation. Would she allow the possibility of failure to anchor her back, or would she embrace every challenge, ready to rise? Sarah arrived at the local library early, her nerves buzzing with anticipation. The room she had reserved was small but inviting, sunlight streaming through the windows and casting a warm glow on the rows of chairs she had arranged. Each chair felt like a gate to her hopes, leading either to success or to the fear she dreaded, exposure as a fraud. She took a deep breath, imagining the eyes of the parents assessing not just her, but also the worth of her ideas. With her hands clasped, she methodically went through her notes. She had prepared bullet points, testimonials from others who believed in her vision, and even a sample workshop outline. Yet, as the clock ticked closer to the start time, doubt clawed its way back into her thoughts. What if she stumbled over her words? What if they dismissed her before she ever began? But in the back of her mind, she remembered Mia's voice, reminded her that she was not attempting this in isolation any longer. In that instant, a shift occurred within her. This was not merely a presentation, it was an opportunity to connect, to share her passion. She tapped her fingers on the table, willing herself to channel that new strength. As parents arrived, she offered warm smiles and engaged in light conversation. They shared stories about their children, recounting experiences that echoed her own hurdles of insecurity. Every interaction chiseled away at her hesitation, replacing it with a burgeoning enthusiasm for what was to come. When the clock struck the hour, Sarah gathered her papers, heart racing with anticipation and fear. Standing in front of her peers, she felt the familiar clenching in her stomach, but it was balanced by an exhilarating rush of purpose. "Thank you all," she began, and at that moment she chose to believe in the strength of her words. As she shared her vision for the storytelling workshops, articulating her hopes for nurturing creative expression in children, she saw nods of affirmation ripple across the room. Her pitch flowed, unshackled by the very fear that had held her captive for weeks. The questions that followed were not skeptical, but curious, encouraging dialogue that propelled her initial nervousness into excitement. "How would you ensure every child feels involved?" one parent asked. Genuinely interested. Sarah paused, allowing the question to settle within her. "That's key for me," she said earnestly. "I intend to create an environment where every voice matters, where even for a moment their stories can shine unapologetically. I want them to inspire each other." Satisfaction pulsed through her as she spoke. Each response from the parents bolstered her confidence, transforming the initial fear of failure into a shared vision of success. Ideas began to flow rapidly, other parents offering suggestions and their own networks to help foster the project. The conversation morphed into a collective brainstorming session, one that transcended her initial goals and transformed into something far more profound. It was no longer just her initiative. It felt larger, buoyed by communal involvement. The tantalizing concept that had earlier seemed fragile now felt alive and potent with possibility. After an hour that felt all too brief, the gathering concluded with heartfelt enthusiasm. Parents left with contact numbers exchanged and an eagerness to contribute. As Sarah packed her notes, the journal in which she had scribbled her thoughts felt heavier now, filled not only with her fears, but with new drafts of collaborative ideas. Yet, as she closed the door behind her, the whirlwind of excitement gave way to a new tension. Was she ready to sustain this momentum? Could she continue to foster energy from a group that expected her to lead? Mr. Fields's voice flared anew, whispering doubt about her ability to hold this fragile creation together. A lingering thought gnawed at her. What if she stumbled again? What if the momentum she'd built returned to a standstill? With this uncertainty pressing against her, she resolved to approach what lay ahead with intention. She needed to cultivate this connection, turning it into something tangible. The notion of collaboration lingered vividly as she approached the car, the chance for rebuttal against her own hesitations whispering in the wind. And then the inspiration struck her as she sat behind the wheel. What if she reached out to others beyond her immediate circle? As the engine rumbled to life, she understood with clarity that the next chapter of this journey was not merely about her. It was about understanding the power of vulnerability and shared potential. She wasn't just fighting against her limitations, she was opening a door for others. As she put the car in gear, the road stretched ahead, fraught with promise but also challenges. How would she navigate the next steps to harness this new energy? What would she uncover as she continued to push against the boundaries of her abilities? Sarah knew the real test was yet to come. As Sarah pulled into her driveway, the faint glow of the setting sun bathed her surroundings in golden light, a time when the world felt particularly alive. Her heart thudded, not just from the adrenaline of her meeting, but from the weight of the possibilities that now lay before her. She was on the precipice of something big, a leap into the unknown that would challenge her even further. Thoughts raced through her mind as she parked the car, each one carrying a weight of anticipation and uncertainty. Once inside, she began formulating a plan. It was clear she needed to act quickly. The energy she had felt during the meeting must not dissipate. She had to sustain it. She moved through her home, gathering materials, craft supplies, presentation boards, and her ever-present notebook. With each item, she felt an uncomfortable clarity. You cannot lead if you do not build a foundation. She settled at her kitchen table and cracked open her laptop, determined to research community resources beyond her immediate circle. The world of workshops felt vast, and Sarah realized that tapping into local talents could not only expand her own capabilities, but also enrich the experience for every child involved. Scrolling through online forums, she discovered several local artists, writers, and educators who offered their services as guest speakers or workshop facilitators. The thought thrilled her. She would curate an experience that mirrored the diverse talents of their community, weaving conversations that made every participant feel valued. Yet a shadow of fear lingered. What if those she reached out to didn't share her enthusiasm? This question seized her, but she pushed it aside. Every moment spent second-guessing herself was a step away from her goals. She decided to draft some emails, appealing to those local talents, sharing her passion, and inviting them to collaborate. As she clicked send on the first email, adrenaline coursed through her veins, empowering her with the realization that she was actively taking control of her narrative. Yet, as the evening wore on, she experienced a swell of doubt. Would her vision resonate with these professionals? Would they respond positively? Or would she face silence, confirming her fears of inadequacy? A gnawing anxiety refused to leave her, and she had to confront it head-on. In the depths of her mind, she summoned the support she had felt from the parents. They had believed in her. Why should these artists and educators be any different? Each email she sent was rooted not just in her desire to succeed, but in a profound commitment to her mission of empowering children. After sending a few more messages, she felt a shift within her. Perhaps the fear of failure would always linger, but it didn't define her. Embracing that uncertainty, Sarah decided to turn toward other aspects she had tucked away for too long. Would they be supportive or indifferent? There was an unyielding urge for her to confront that doubt before it eclipsed her progress. It was in that moment of clarity that she understood resilience wasn't about eliminating fear. It was about moving forward regardless. With newfound determination, she pulled out the journal filled with ideas they had drafted together with the parents. It was time for her to dig deeper into what they could build collectively. As the clock ticked deeper into the night, she delineated potential themes and sessions for the workshops, inspired by the diverse experiences of parents that had shared their stories. Under each idea, she scribbled notes on how she could foster collaboration between different skill sets. Would they work together seamlessly? The question haunted her, yet the potential dazzled her further. She was teetering on the edge of a revelation. This journey was becoming less about proving herself and wholly about creating an ecosystem of shared creativity. As her pen glided over the pages, Sarah realized she was beginning to forge her identity not only as a leader, but also as a collaborator. However, a new challenge was surfacing. The more she ventured into the unknown, the more she was haunted by her insecurities. Would she have the strength to face disappointment if things didn't go as planned? The fragile seams of her resolve flickered in the dim overhead light as her thoughts spiraled. She closed the notebook and took a deep breath, the weight of her aspirations resting heavily on her shoulders. This was no longer just about an initiative. It was about building a foundation of trust and creativity that took form in the hearts of the participants. Would Sarah's next move solidify her commitment to this community, or would fear draw her back into the shadows? With her fingers hovering over the keyboard, she contemplated her next email. Instinctively, the thought flashed through her mind. If she fell, how would she pick herself up again? As she hesitated, a new email alert pinged her, drawing her attention. Was this the response that would propel her forward, or would it serve as a reminder of her fears? The moment felt pivotal, and as she clicked to open it, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The message awaited her with an almost electric anticipation. As Sarah opened it, her heart raced. It was a reply from Mia, reflecting on their earlier conversation. The words glowed with support. "I believe in you," Mia wrote, detailing how she would help spread the word about the workshops and connect Sarah with other parents in her community who might want to join. A wave of warmth surged through Sarah, stitching together the frayed edges of her confidence. Here was the reminder she needed. She was not alone in this endeavor. This project was not just her burden to carry, it was a shared mission. The fear began to lift slightly, and she felt the burdensome weight ease with each reaffirming word. With a renewed determination, Sarah dove back into her planning. She drafted a new to-do list filled with actionable steps that would propel her initiative forward. Each item transformed into a milestone. Reach out to local artists, schedule meetings, outline the first workshop's themes. Sarah was beginning to visualize a map of collaboration, crystallizing her ambition into something reusable and impactful. As the days rolled into a week, she maintained a steadfast pace. Each email sent to local artists, educators ignited a small flicker of hope. Responses began streaming in, confirming her presence in the community. With each new connection, she felt a firmer sense of ground beneath her feet. A shift marked not simply by external approval, but by her resilience surfacing in a decisive way. 10 days after her initial meeting, she stood at the library once more, this time surrounded by a group of eager parents who had come together to craft the first storytelling workshop. Sarah felt the buzz of collective excitement as they brainstormed potential activities, themes, and ways to engage the children. She had expected nerves, but instead the familiar tangle of vulnerability wove into supportive camaraderie. This was a community in the making. One mother shared how her son struggled to express himself verbally, but thrived through art. An idea sparked within Sarah. Workshops could incorporate various artistic expressions, letting children communicate their stories not just through words, but through drawing, acting, or even music. It was a radical shift from her solitary approach, but it felt intuitive and harmonious. As Sarah facilitated the discussion, she felt her own voice burgeoning with confidence. Every question posed and every idea contributed from those gathered ignited a new sense of ownership and empowerment. They were crafting something real, something that belonged to everyone involved. During the meeting, Emily had quietly entered the room, observing from the sidelines. Sarah caught sight of her daughter, arms crossed, uncertainty painting her small features. But under that timid exterior, sparks of curiosity flickered as she watched her mother shift from apprehension to warmth, opening up the space for potential. As the meeting wrapped up, each parent left with renewed inspiration and clarity. Sarah lingered, feeling a warm glow of satisfaction in her chest. She turned and saw Emily finally approach her, her small hand reaching for Sarah's. "Mom," Emily said softly, her voice unexpectedly steady, "I think I want to try that art thing you talked about." Surprised but elated, Sarah knelt down, looking directly into Emily's eyes. "Really? You would like to participate?" "Yeah, the way you explained it made it sound fun. I want to tell my stories too," Emily replied. In that moment, the walls of silence began to crack. Sarah felt an overwhelming wave of pride wash over her. This was the outcome she had longed for, bridging her vulnerabilities against the backdrop of fear, creating not just a workshop for others, but a safe haven for her daughter to find her voice. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. With the support of fellow parents, they designed workshop schedules and outlined themes that drew in children from the local community. Sarah saw the small triumphs of her initiative reflected in burgeoning conversations, laughter, and the gentle hum of expression filling the room during meetings. On the day of the first workshop, Sarah stood before a group of children, including Emily, who had blossomed into radiant confidence. The excitement in the room bubbled as the kids engaged with different storytelling activities, culminating in an impromptu sharing moment. Emily stood among her peers, her apprehension melting away. As she took a breath to speak, the silence transformed into an expectant hush. "I'm going to tell a story about a dragon who learns to fly," Emily declared, voice clear and resonant. The childlike wonder infused in her words lit up the room. Sarah couldn't help but choke back tears of pride. Here was a moment of victory, not just for Emily, but for their entire journey, one that embodied growth through shared experiences and community support. At that moment, Sarah acknowledged her transformation, a shift from a struggling single mom facing judgment to a confident leader helping create space for children to express themselves. She felt solid confidence blooming within her. Mr. Field's echo faded further into the background. His dismissive words now felt insipid compared to the richness that community engagement offered. Here, with both her daughter and others finding their voices, she had achieved what she once thought impossible. As the first workshop concluded with cheers and applause from the children, Sarah stood amidst the accolades, recognizing her own evolution. She had forged a new path, not only for herself, but had illuminated a way forward for Emily and others, redefining what it meant to thrive amidst challenges. With resolve solidifying within her, she understood the importance of support and community, a realization she would carry into every venture moving forward. She had conquered doubt and emerged empowered, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead, a testament to resilience and connection. In that crucial moment, Sarah embraced her role as a mother and leader, aware of her gift. She had created lasting change through vulnerability and interaction. With her head held high, she savored the sweetness of triumph, confident that together they would continue to rise. Now, as she looked toward the horizon of future workshops, Sarah felt a gentle clarity, achieving more than she ever imagined. This was her moment, one molded by growth and connectedness. You need to subscribe now to witness the evolution of personal journeys that make a difference. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and elevate these stories to inspire others. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment below your reactions and theories about what's next. Your engagement matters.